Well, well, look, as far as Afghanistan goes, obviously, they were playing that game long before we were playing that game, just because they were around longer. But, I'm just afraid that if things like marijuana become legalized, look what happened with methadone. That was supposed to control the problem, and that's really become, another way of controlling the population, right?
Right, but methadone is a very specific kind of drug. Methadone is to maintain opiate users.
Right.
There's just a tremendous difference between marijuana and methadone, and I think one of the problems of our current drug policy is really that we try and treat a lot of these drugs in the same way that are very, very different. LSD is not heroin, is not marijuana, is not ibogaine. They're all very different drugs with very different effects on the body, very different mechanisms of social control.
Yet they're all lumped together, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, as if they had something in common.
Up to Schedule 5.
Right.
Right.
So what you're saying is, if either the police want to control us from the top down, or the companies like the tobacco companies want to profit from us from the bottom up, right?
Right. I mean, basically, it's a system where, who has control? Law enforcement.
Right.
The medical authorities.
Well, it sounds to me like, maybe the best tactic for, to keep people from being arrested for using marijuana is maybe to encourage them to drink instead of smoking marijuana. That might be the lesser of evils, right?
Well, except that alcohol rots your liver.
Yeah,
well, look, that's
and
a rhetorical
alcohol.
question, but all I'm saying is, well, what am I going to take? Look, I mean, until you get people to take vitamins instead of drugs, what are we going to do, right?
Right, harm reduction, that's what it's called. I guess that's in a way what we're talking about is harm reduction. In other words, taking the point of view that it's not even a good idea to try and stamp out all drug use.
Right, because
instead,
right.
It's a better idea to minimize the potential harm from drug use so that less people are hurt by it. That flies in the face of the current United States government philosophy for dealing with drugs.
Right, and it's really a question of minimizing both the harms from the drugs themselves as well as the harms from the policies to control those drugs.
They're trying, their policy is to stop people from ever using illegal drugs, but then the whole issue becomes illegal drugs. It's such a arbitrary decision as to what is or is not an illegal drug. You have many dangerous drugs that are perfectly legal, that are poorly controlled, that people get very easily, and yet others that are less harmful, like marijuana, for example, that are used to actually help people and treat people in many, many illnesses, who then are put in prison for years at a time.
Well, maybe the people you should be talking to are the people, like the drug companies, to, let's say, alter their philosophy because they have the lobbying power to influence people's decision and that sort of thing. So instead of, try to start, the point being is that, look, if it was in our interest, let's say, to make a profit off of cheap energy, the people would jump on it. So it's like if, maybe the top-down approach will work better than the bottom-up approach just because, we're a profit-motivated society, right?
All right. Thank you for that, caller.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
you.
Good luck.
Thanks for that point. All right. That's interesting. I want to show folks, by the way, thanks for that call again, and we are here live for the next few minutes. Here is a very interesting statistic. I hope you can see it. This is the number of, over here is the marijuana possession arrests in New York City over 3 decades, okay? This first one, very low, about 25,000, 33,000 actually, is 1977 to 1986. Then we had a little less, actually, 30,000 marijuana possession arrests in New York City between 1987 and 1996. Between 1997 and 2006, pretty much the last decade, 10 times that, 353,000 arrests. Now, what effect, why are they doing that, and what effect does that have? Why does New York City, and why did it decide to increase its arrests for marijuana possession by 10 times?
Well, because marijuana arrests are great for cops. Cops love making marijuana arrests because, I mean, if you think about it, you get overtime. You have to be with the person from the the time they're arrested to the time they're arraigned. And really, if you're a New York City patrol officer, who do you want to be with? Do you want to be with a dirty, perhaps dangerous, diseased user of hard drugs, or do you want to be with someone who uses marijuana, who probably is kind of interesting to talk to, and they're clean and they're not violent?
It's an easy bust.
It's an easy bust.
Well, let's look at this statistic while we have a few minutes. This is a fascinating statistic here. Let's look at this one here. The large bars here. Now, I'll explain it here. It says the whites, Hispanics, and blacks arrested for marijuana possession in New York City over 2 decades. Here's 1987 and 1996. White down there, Hispanics there, Latinos and Latinas, and blacks, African Americans on the top. All right, that's of the 33,000. And you can see the large percentage is black and Latino, a very tiny percentage white. But let's see what happens 10 years later. Here it is, 1997 to 2006, 10 times as many arrests, 350,000, 52% African Americans, 31% Hispanics. That's a total of 83%. 15%, only 53,000 whites were arrested for drug possession in this 1997 to 2006. Each group had a significant increase, but look here. That's pretty amazing. Now, what were you saying about this, Doug Greene?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a policy that was put into place under Giuliani and unfortunately has continued under Bloomberg. And I really hope that whoever runs against Bloomberg next year, Anthony Weiner or Bill Thompson, is willing to make an issue of this because, in a time when the city is having to refund $800 million in business taxes because their projections are too optimistic, how can we afford to be making all these marijuana arrests? Is that really a good use of our, our scarce government resources when we're cutting social services?
Pray tell, I know, you're right. All right, meanwhile, what's interesting is that marijuana use is really sort of going down.
Yeah, it's been on a decline.
Do you think that has to do with all this arresting of people? I mean, that's probably what they're saying. Do you think they're claiming that they're arresting people and people are using less marijuana and that's less of a gateway to other drugs like heroin and other things like that?
I think that's part of the rationale, but consistently studies across different countries have shown that the drug policies really don't make too much of a difference in terms of actual drug use. If you look, one of the arguments against medical marijuana was that in the states where medical marijuana was legalized, that it was going to increase marijuana use, especially among youth. They've done studies. It's not true. It hasn't happened.
Let's talk about, we only got a minute. Doug Greene, tell us a little bit about what happened in November vis-a-vis regarding marijuana laws. Quickly, what was that situation?
The situation is that we're hopeful that President-elect Barack Obama is going to call off the raids on the clubs in California.
The medical marijuana clubs.
Medical marijuana clubs.
Where the state law was changed and legalized, or at least medical marijuana was decriminalized, but there's still federal laws they're dealing with.
There's still federal laws they're dealing with, but there was actually a great decision that just came out today. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to review a California decision about whether or not a local police department in the city of Garden Grove, California, had to return the marijuana to someone who possessed it for medical reasons, and a mid-level California appellate court had said they have to return the marijuana to the patient. The California Supreme Court declined to review that case, and now just yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court just declined to review the decision as well.
So that means it stands that if they take their marijuana away from somebody who they have arrested, that person turns out to have a legitimate use under state law, they have to actually return it.
That's right. Law enforcement cannot say, well, we're not following state law, we're following federal law.
The government is already distributing marijuana in the state of California. The police are actually distributing marijuana.
And that was their argument against it. They claimed they would be violating federal law.
Well, we've already entered a new era.
That's right.
Very good. And how about, we have a few seconds, 2 states, Michigan and Massachusetts.
Right. Michigan.
They've joined the rolls.
Well, Michigan approved medical marijuana for the first time. Massachusetts decriminalized marijuana, and one thing that people should remember is that both of those initiatives got more votes in those states than Barack Obama did.
Very interesting point. Doug Greene, thank you for joining us in a discussion about drug prohibition here on the 70th anniversary of the
75th.
All right.